"Move it, vagrant!" Officer Miller's voice cut through the early morning cold like shattered glass, sharp and without mercy. It echoed down the grimy alley beside St. Mary's shelter, where the old man, Samuel, lay curled beneath a shockingly thin, threadbare blanket. The rough brick wall behind him offered little protection. His eyes, pale and weathered like a faded sky, blinked open slowly, clouded with the remnants of restless sleep. He had been dreaming of green fields, a place untouched for half a century, where the air was free from the city's cold, metallic bite and the choking fumes of exhaust. With effort, Samuel tried to sit up, every joint resisting with the painful symphony of age. He was far too slow for Officer Miller. "I don't have all day, Grandpa. This ain't a hotel." A blue spark erupted from the taser in Miller's hand, bright and violent. A wet, sickening thud followed as Samuel's frail body convulsed and collapsed. His worn face smacked the filthy pavement. A thin trail of blood began to trickle from his temple. "I told you to move," Miller sneered, standing wide and tall, taser still in hand like a petty king surveying his broken domain. A groan escaped from Samuel, low and hollow, soaked in sorrow. It was a sound that should have shattered the silence of the morning, should have made the world stop and take notice. This was how the city welcomed its forgotten. This was how justice greeted those with nothing left but the rags on their back and the ghosts haunting their eyes. If you believe that no one, absolutely no one, deserves this kind of treatment, especially those who may have given more than we could ever imagine, type honor, Samuel wasn't just any homeless old man. Beneath the layers of grime and worn clothes, beneath a coat frayed by endless winters, there was the outline of discipline, a ghost of posture that once stood ramrod straight, still flickering despite decades of hardship. He rarely spoke. When he did, it was in a gravelly whisper, maybe a quiet "thank you for soup at the shelter," or a hushed "God bless" to the rare passerby who offered a coin instead of contempt. The staff at the shelter knew him as quiet, respectful, never a problem, but they didn't know about the medals. Hidden in a rusted tin box buried deep within a duffel bag, the only luggage he had. They didn't know about the nights he spent staring at cracked ceilings, replaying battles fought in distant jungles, faces of lost brothers flickering before. His eyes, his situation was the brutal result of a system that forgot its promises. He had once been a warrior, a leader, a man others followed. Now? Just another shadow in society's blind spot, a nuisance, a number waiting to be erased. That morning, he had taken shelter near St. Mary's, hoping to find a spot inside once it opened. The alley gave him slight cover from the wind, but not from men like Officer Miller. Samuel had learned to disappear, to become invisible. But sometimes that wasn't enough. Officer Dave Miller, barely 5 years into the force, saw himself as a guardian against urban decay. To him, the homeless weren't people. They were eyesores, infections on the city's surface. He patrolled his sector with puffed-up pride, always looking to assert control. And this morning, he was in a fouler mood than usual, a tongue-lashing from his sergeant about loitering complaints in the area still stung. He needed to make an example. Samuel, stirring too slowly from troubled sleep, became that example. "This area needs to be clear," Miller barked, his voice bouncing off the alley's walls. "You can't just sleep here. This is city property." Samuel, dazed and disoriented, tried to respond. Just a moment, officer. I'll gather my things." His voice was raspy, weak. Miller scoffed. "A moment? I gave you a moment. You bums think you own this place." He tapped the taser against his thigh, an unspoken threat. A young woman named Sarah, a volunteer at the shelter, had just arrived. From the doorway, she witnessed it all, her heart thudding. She wanted to speak up, but Miller's hostility froze the words in her throat. She had seen him before, always on edge, always provoking. Other figures, shadows barely visible in the dim light, began to retreat into nearby alcoves, faces etched with fear. They knew not to draw attention. Meanwhile, Samuel, stiff and aching, began collecting his meager belongings, a blanket, a tattered backpack. His motions were slow, pained, not defiant, just old, just cold, just tired. But Miller saw only disrespect. "You deaf old man? Or just stupid?" The tension in the alley became suffocating. Samuel's hands shook as he fumbled with the knot on his pack. He looked up at Miller, not with defiance, but with weary sorrow. "Please, officer," he started, barely audible. "I mean, no harm? I'm just trying to—" Miller laughed cruelly. "Trying to what? Infest the neighborhood? We've had complaints, lots of complaints, about you, about all of you." He waved a hand toward the eye, doorways where others still hid. It wasn't true. Most complaints were vague, voiced by a few annoyed business owners. Nothing about Samuel specifically. But Miller needed to feel justified. For himself, if no one else. He stepped closer. Loomed. Over the half-crouched old man. "I'm gonna count to 3, Miller said, his voice now a dark growl. 1. Samuel tried to rise, dizzy from the effort. The concrete was like ice beneath his feet. 2. He could feel Miller's impatience like heat. He had seen this scene before, though rarely as the direct target. He just needed a few more seconds. His fingers, numb, fumbled with the strap. Sarah stepped forward finally. "Officer, he's just an old man. Miller turned his glare on her. It could have soured milk. "Stay out of this, ma'am, unless you want." "To be charged with obstruction," she recoiled. Miller turned back. 3. Before Samuel could fully rise, before another word could leave his mouth, Miller pulled the trigger. The taser's prongs hit Samuel square in the back. Agony surged through him like fire. Every muscle convulsed. His body twisted unnaturally. A strangled cry escaped his throat as he collapsed. His backpack flew open. Out spilled a worn Bible, a half-eaten sandwich, a small tarnished tin box, which clattered open, revealing a flash of purple and bronze. Then darkness. The air sizzled. With residual electricity, Samuel lay twitching, face down. Blood and spittle marked the pavement. Officer Miller, breathing a little heavy, reholstered his taser with a click. "Should have moved when I told him," he muttered. He nudged Samuel's shoulder with his boot. "Get up, you're coming with." "Me, vagrancy, resisting, we'll figure something out." From the shelter's doorway, Sarah finally spoke, her voice a broken sob. "You monster." "He wasn't doing anything." Miller ignored her. He moved to cuff Samuel, but then a siren, wailing, fast approaching. Someone, maybe another shelter worker watching from a window, had called 911 the moment Miller grew aggressive. An ambulance arrived, followed closely by a patrol car. Lights flashed, casting red and blue shadows over the alley. Miller's partner, Officer Kowski, got out, older, more jaded. 2 paramedics rushed in, one a young woman, the other stocky and calm-eyed. This was Henderson. While his partner checked Samuel's vitals, Henderson scanned the scene. He took in Miller's smug stance, the trembling volunteer, the scattered contents of Samuel's life. Then his eyes stopped on the tin box. He knelt, narrowed. His eyes, inside, tarnished but unmistakable, lay a purple heart and a dog tag, barely readable. But Henderson recognized the numbers. His blood ran cold. He'd seen that designation once, at a dusty archive in Paris Island, a unit spoken of in whispers. He looked again at Samuel, now groaning faintly under oxygen. A tattoo showed on his forearm, exposed during the fall. Faded, but clear to trained eyes, a bulldog in a helmet. Chesty, the Marine Corps mascot, and below it, symbols even more distinct. Force Reconnaissance, Elite. This wasn't just any vet. Henderson stood slowly, holding the dog tag. He looked at Miller, who tapped his foot impatiently. "Officer Miller," Henderson said, voice dangerously calm. "What exactly happened here?" Miller puffed up. "Subject was non-compliant, refused to vacate, became aggressive. I deployed my taser." Henderson's eyes, cold, hard, bored into him. "Aggressive?" He pointed to Samuel, now on the gurney. "He looks like he weighs 100 pounds and is 70 years old." Kowski walked over, his expression tired. "Easy, Miller. Paramedics got a point. What's the full story?" Miller began to bluster, but Henderson was already pulling out his personal phone. His fingers moved with precision. He scrolled to a number he hadn't made that call in years, a number he remembered well, one that had the power to unleash either chaos or salvation, depending on the situation. The call went through on the second ring. "Sir?" Henderson answered, his voice immediately losing its earlier calm. In its place came a sharp, formal tone that caught Kowski's attention, causing him to raise an eyebrow. "Paramedic Henderson, former Sergeant, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. I'm at St. Mary's Shelter downtown. There's been an incident. I believe I've found Gunny Donovan." A pause, then. "Yes, sir. The Gunny Donovan. He's hurt. There was a police encounter. Taser was used." Silence followed for a moment. Then muffled shouting came from the other end. Henderson listened, face set in grim lines. "Yes, sir. Understood. They're transporting him to City General. But I believe you'll want to be here. Now." He ended the call, turning to lock eyes with Kowski. "You might want to have your partner step aside," Henderson said, voice devoid of inflection. "And maybe contact your watch commander. Things are about to escalate." Kowski, an old-timer who'd seen enough strange events to trust his instincts, looked at the battered old man on the gurney, then at Henderson's iron-set jaw, then finally at his partner, Miller, who was still fuming. An unexplainable chill ran down his spine. He didn't know who Gunny Donovan was, but Henderson's voice, the almost sacred tone when he said the name, made it clear. This situation had just left their pay grade far behind. Less than 6 minutes later, the first sounds arrived, not sirens, but a deep, vibrating hum that seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. People turned, even Officer Miller, mid-rant about paramedic disobedience, fell silent. The hum intensified, resolving into the unmistakable rumble of heavy engines. Then they appeared, 2 matte green Humvees, followed closely by a sleek, unmarked black sedan exuding an air of unquestionable authority. They didn't slow. Instead, they surged onto the narrow street, executing a flawless maneuver that blocked off both ends of the alley. Doors flung open, and uniformed figures disembarked. These were not police officers. Their digital camouflage, the fluid, tactical precision of their movements, and the M4 carbines carried at the ready marked them unmistakably as United States Marines. At least a dozen fanned out, securing the area with terrifying efficiency. Civilians froze in place, daily routines forgotten. Even the few homeless watching from the shadows shrank back, though something flickered in their eyes. Maybe hope, maybe disbelief. Officer Miller stood frozen, his jaw unhinged. His face, previously red with anger and inflated ego, had turned ghostly pale. What the hell is this?" he muttered, scanning the Marines, then looking to Kowski, who merely shook his head, his own face reflecting dread. The rear door of the black sedan swung open, and a man stepped out, tall, impeccably straight. His Marine Corps service uniform was flawless, the silver eagles on his collar catching the dim morning light. Colonel James Iron Jim Davies. His face was a chiseled mask, his eyes bearing the weight of command and a dire urgency. He took in the scene with a sweep of his gaze, the stunned officers, the paramedics, the bystanders, until his eyes landed on the gurney, on Samuel Donovan. Henderson stood beside it like a guardian. Colonel Davies moved fast, far faster than expected. For someone of his rank, he marched toward the gurney, boots striking sharp against pavement. The Marines parted before him. Without a word, he stopped, looked down at Samuel's bruised, bloodied face. His stern features softened just barely. Samuel's eyes fluttered, open, swimming in pain and confusion. He focused with effort on the figure before him. "Colonel Davies?" he rasped, astonished. Recognition sparked in his gaze. Davies knelt, placing a gloved hand gently on his shoulder. "Gunny," he said, voice thick with emotion, so unlike his usual steel. "Gunny Samuel Donovan, what have they done to you?" The rank, Gunny, gunnery sergeant, spoken by a full-bird colonel, hung in the air like a sacred chant. Henderson stepped forward, offering the tarnished dog tag. Colonel Davies took it, looked at it, then back to Samuel. "It is you," he said softly. His expression hardened again. He turned sharply, his ice-blue stare locking onto Officer Miller, who looked as though he might vomit. "Officer!" Davies barked, voice like a whip crack. Miller jumped. "Who did this?" Miller trembled, a finger raising, pointing feebly at himself. He resisted." Davies stood, his full height, imposing, radiating frozen fury. "Resisted?" His voice cut like glass. "Gunnery Sergeant Samuel Donovan, decorated hero of Quezon and a dozen other hellholes. A man who once held off an enemy platoon with a jammed rifle and a K-bar until backup arrived? The man who saved my life, and my squad's, when I was a scared second lieutenant?" He stepped closer. "You dare say he resisted you?" The contempt in Davies' voice made Miller shrink. "This man," Davies roared, his voice booming down the silent street, "is a legend in the United States Marine Corps. He has more courage, more honor, more integrity in his little finger than you have, in your entire being. He holds the Navy Cross, 3 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star with valor. He trained generations of Marines. He breathed Semper Fidelis." He glared at Miller. "And you tasered him for sleeping in an alley?" Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Sarah, the shelter volunteer, clapped her hands over her mouth, weeping. Even Kowski looked devastated by his partner's disgrace. There was no violence, but the blow landed all the same, authority crashing down with brutal weight. Davies didn't raise his voice further. He didn't need to. "Officer," he said coldly, "you are a stain on your uniform, a disgrace to all who have worn it with honor." He turned to a newly arrived police captain, drawn by the military commotion. "Captain," Davies said crisply, "I want a full investigation. I want this officer's badge, and I want him off the streets." He pointed to the gurney. "Gunnery Sergeant Donovan is now under the protection of the United States Marine Corps. He will receive proper medical treatment, and he will be treated with the respect he has earned many times over." The captain, speechless, nodded. "Yes, Colonel, absolutely." 2 large Marines approached, gently lifting Samuel from the ambulance gurney to a military one with reverent hands. As they moved him, Samuel met Davies' eyes. A faint smile flickered across his lips. "Knew you'd be late, Jimmy," he rasped. A flash of the old gunny peeking through. Davies' eyes misted. "Never too late for you, Gunny. Never." Meanwhile, Miller was being led, silently, firmly, to the squad car by Kowski, now thoroughly disgusted. The cocky officer was gone, replaced by a crumpled shell of shame and fear. The crowd watched in silence, their fear turned into awe. For the frail old man was no ordinary vagrant, but a living legend. The message was loud and clear: you don't mess with a Marine, especially not one like Gunny Donovan. The block, just moments earlier a forgotten piece of urban rot, now stood under silent Marine control, a symbol of brotherhood, forged in fire. The taser lay on the ground, useless, meaningless now. Samuel Donovan was rushed to the nearest naval hospital. Colonel Davies stayed by his side until stable, overseeing every comfort. The taser wounds, though painful, were shallow. But the wounds of neglect and humiliation? Those would take longer to mend. Miller was suspended, with Internal Affairs launching a deep investigation under close scrutiny by both the embarrassed police command and the watchful Marine Corps. The story spread quickly. Within days, veterans across the city were talking. The mayor issued a formal apology. St. Mary's Shelter, once struggling, began receiving anonymous donations. Enough to expand. Enough to keep veterans off the cold concrete, if they could help it. Gunny Donovan became a legend, living proof of the hidden heroes among us. A call to recognize the forgotten. Police protocol changed. Veteran interactions now required empathy, training, support, not suspicion. Change rippled outward, and a moral was stamped into every corner of the city. Never judge by appearances. True worth lies not in possessions, but in sacrifice, in courage, in quiet dignity. Donovan had never asked for anything, but through his pain, he lit a path forward, not with vengeance, but with honor. He reminded us all, loyalty still lives, respect still matters. Weeks later, Samuel had recovered, settled in a comfortable apartment arranged by the VA and Colonel Davies. He could often be seen volunteering at St. Mary's, quiet, strong, a beacon. He never boasted. He didn't need to, because the Marines hadn't just rescued a brother that day. They reignited faith. They reminded the city that honor, once earned, cannot be erased, only forgotten for a while. The tale of Gunny Samuel Donovan lives on through hidden sparks, a reminder of quiet warriors enduring sacrifice and the moments that redeem entire communities. If this story moved you, if you believe in dignity, service, and seeing the hero behind the hardship, follow Hidden Sparks for more stories that inspire, and type honor in the comments if you stand with those who've served.